Fifth, the Red Diamond Division has a history dating back to World War I. In World War II, it landed in Normandy in July 1944 and fought across France and into Lorraine as part of General Patton's Third Army. The relief of Bastogne was spearheaded by the 4th Armored Division, not the 5th Infantry Division. It was reactivated as a mechanized division during the Vietnam War and served until it was finally inactivated in 1992 as part of the post-Cold War drawdown. Sixth, the Red Star Division was an infantry division that primarily served in the Pacific Theater during World War II. It fought in a series of grueling jungle campaigns in New Guinea and the Philippines, earning a reputation for its toughness in close-quarters combat. The division was inactivated after the war, briefly reactivated, and then its lineage was used for the 6th Infantry Division Light in Alaska, before that unit was finally reflagged as part of the 11th Airborne Division in 2022. Eighth, the 8th Infantry Division, nicknamed the Pathfinder, or Golden Arrow, fought in Europe during both World Wars. It landed at Normandy in July 1944 and saw brutal combat in the Battle for Brest and the Hurtgen Forest. After the war, it remained in West Germany for the entire duration of the Cold War as a key part of the NATO Defense Force, ready to defend the Fulda Gap, before being inactivated in 1992. Ninth, the 9th Infantry Division was a versatile division that served with distinction in World War II, fighting in North Africa, Sicily, and across France and Germany. It was reactivated for the Vietnam War, where it pioneered innovative riverine warfare tactics in the Mekong Delta using a joint Army-Navy force. In the 1980s, it was famously transformed into a unique, high-technology motorized division to test new concepts before its final inactivation in the 1990s. 10th. The 10th Division was a World War I-era U.S. Army division activated in 1918 as part of the massive wartime expansion. Like several late-formed divisions, it spent its short existence training in the United States and preparing for deployment to Europe, but the war ended before it could be sent overseas. With the post-war drawdown, the division was demobilized in 1919, making it one of the raised too late formations that never saw combat as a full division. 11th. The 11th Division was another short-lived World War I-era division activated in 1918 during the Army's rapid buildup. It trained in the United States and was intended to provide additional combat power for the Western Front, but the armistice arrived before the division could deploy. As the Army demobilized, the 11th was broken up and dissolved in 1919, leaving it as a brief, stateside chapter in the Army's World War I mobilization story. 12th. The 12th was a unique and tragic unit. Known as the Philippine Division, it was the U.S. Army's primary combat force in the Philippines before World War II. It was composed of American officers and enlisted Filipino soldiers, known as the Philippine Scouts. The division fought valiantly against the Japanese invasion in 1941-42, but was ultimately destroyed and forced to surrender at Bataan. Its surviving members endured the Bataan Death March, and the division was never reconstituted. 13th. The 13th Division was a World War I-era infantry division activated in 1918 at Camp Lewis, Washington, to train for service in France. It became known as the Lucky 13th, but the war ended before it could deploy and fight. The division was inactivated in 1919, making it one of the raised too late divisions, whose story is mostly about mobilization and training, rather than battlefield campaigns. 14th. The 14th Wolverines Division was a short-lived World War I-era infantry division formed at Camp Custer, Michigan in 1918. It never made it to Europe before the armistice, and its story is defined by training and the huge influenza outbreak that hit Camp Custer in late 1918, forcing strict quarantine measures on the post. With the war over, the division was demobilized in early 1919. 15th. The 15th Division was one of several late war divisions organized in 1918 to prepare for deployment to France, but it did not go overseas before the fighting ended. It was built and trained in the United States, and after the armistice it was quickly broken up as the Army rapidly demobilized. The division was demobilized in February 1919 at Camp Logan, Texas. 16th. The 16th Division was raised in 1918 as part of the U.S. Army's late war expansion, intended to be combat ready by the end of 1918. Formation centered at Camp Kearney in California, but the armistice arrived before the division could deploy. Demobilization began in early 1919, and the division was dissolved by March 1919. 17th. The 17th Division's World War I story is messy because the designation was used more than once, but the 1918 to 1919 version was a stateside infantry division that never went overseas. It functioned as a replacement and training formation and was demobilized in January 1919 at Camp Beauregard, Louisiana, as the Army rapidly shrank after the armistice. 18th. The 18th Division was organized in 1918 and assembled largely around Camp Travis, Texas, but it did not reach the front before the war ended. Like the other late-formed divisions, its role was preparation, training, and building capacity that became unnecessary once the armistice was signed. It was demobilized in February 1919 at Camp Travis. 19th. The 19th Division was organized in 1918 as part of the late war buildup and trained at Camp Dodge, Iowa, but it never deployed overseas before the armistice. It picked up the nickname Twilight Division, reflecting how late it arrived in the war's timeline. With the post-war drawdown, it was demobilized in February 1919. 20th. The 20th Division was another 1918 emergency infantry division raised too late to fight. It was organized as the war ended, with its cantonment at Camp Sevier, South Carolina, and it never sailed for France before the armistice shut the door on deployment. The division was demobilized in February 1919 as the U.S. Army rapidly returned to peacetime footing. Americal. The Americal Division has a unique history. It was the only U.S. Army division to be formed outside of the United States since the Civil War, activated in 1942 on the island of New Caledonia in the Pacific. Its name is a contraction of Americans in New Caledonia. It fought on Guadalcanal and in the Philippines. The division was reactivated for the Vietnam War and is infamously associated with the My Lai massacre. It was inactivated in 1971. 24th. The 24th Infantry Division was a mechanized infantry division that saw extensive service. It was present at the attack on Pearl Harbor and fought throughout the Pacific in World War II. It was also one of the first American units to see combat in the Korean War. The Victory Division is most famous in the modern era for being the left hook of the ground assault in Operation Desert Storm, a massive armored flanking maneuver that annihilated the Iraqi Republican Guard. It was inactivated in 1996. 26th. The Yankee Division was a classic National Guard formation from New England. It served with distinction in France during World War I. In World War II, it landed in France in late 1944 and was famously thrown into the Battle of the Bulge as part of General Patton's Third Army, helping to relieve the siege of Bastogne before being inactivated after the war. 27th. Formed from the New York National Guard, the 27th Division served in both World Wars. In World War II, it fought in the Pacific Theater, participating in grueling island-hopping campaigns. It saw heavy fighting on the islands of Makin, Eniwetok, and most notoriously Saipan, where it suffered very high casualties in brutal close-quarters combat against tenacious Japanese defenders. 30th. Named after President Andrew Jackson, Old Hickory was a National Guard division from the southeastern states. It was considered by many historians to be one of the most effective and hard-hitting American infantry divisions in Europe during World War II. It landed at Normandy, spearheaded the breakout during Operation Cobra, and was instrumental in smashing through the Siegfried Line into Germany. 31st. The Dixie Division was another National Guard formation from the Deep South. It served in World War I and was reactivated for World War II. During World War II, it was deployed to the Pacific Theater, where it fought in grueling jungle campaigns in New Guinea and the southern Philippines, helping to clear Japanese forces from the island of Mindanao. 32nd. The Red Arrow Division, formed from Wisconsin and Michigan National Guard units, earned a fearsome reputation in the Pacific theater of World War II. It was famous for fighting in some of the most brutal jungle campaigns of the war, accumulating more days in combat than any other U.S. Army division. It fought its way through the hellish conditions of New Guinea and the Philippines, consistently piercing enemy lines. 33rd. The Prairie Division was an Illinois National Guard formation with service in both World Wars. After fighting in France in World War I, it was deployed to the Pacific in World War II. The division participated in the long and difficult New Guinea campaign and later fought in the liberation of the Philippines. 37th. The Buckeye Division was formed from the Ohio National Guard. It fought in World War I and saw extensive and brutal combat in the Pacific during World War II. The division fought its way through the Solomon Islands and was heavily involved in the bloody urban fighting to recapture the city of Manila in the Philippines in 1945. 39th. The 39th Infantry Division, nicknamed the Delta Division, was a National Guard formation built from units in Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. In World War I, it trained at Camp Beauregard and deployed to France, but it did not enter combat before the war ended. After the war, the division disappeared from the rolls for years, then returned after World War II as a Guard division split between Louisiana and Arkansas. In 1967, it was reorganized and redesignated as the 39th Infantry Brigade, ending its run as an infantry division. 41st. The Sunset Division was a National Guard formation from the Pacific Northwest. It was one of the first American divisions to be deployed overseas after Pearl Harbor and spent more time in combat than any other U.S. division during World War II. It fought in some of the most difficult jungle terrain of the war in New Guinea and the southern Philippines. 43rd. The 43rd was a National Guard division from New England. It was deployed to the Pacific Theater in World War II and saw intense combat in the Solomon Islands and the New Guinea campaigns. The division later played a key role in the liberation of the Philippines, fighting in the crucial battles on the island of Luzon. 44th. The 44th was a National Guard division that served in Europe during World War II. It arrived in France in late 1944 and was thrust into combat, fighting through the Alsace region and pushing into Germany and Austria in the final months of the war. After the war, it was reorganized as a New Jersey National Guard division before being inactivated. 45th. The Thunderbird was a National Guard division from the Southwest, renowned for having a high proportion of Native American soldiers. It fought with distinction in some of the toughest campaigns in Europe during World War II, including the invasions of Sicily and Italy, the Anzio beachhead, and the push into Germany. The division was also activated for service in the Korean War. 46th. The 46th Infantry Division was a Cold War-era National Guard division built around Michigan. It served as a stateside division headquarters in the Strategic Reserve, training to be mobilized for a major war. During later force restructurings, it was reorganized out of existence as a division, ending its run as an infantry division. 47th. The 47th Infantry Division was a National Guard formation centered in the Upper Midwest, best known as a Cold War-era division headquarters that trained for mobilization, rather than deploying as a full division. Over time, it was reorganized and redesignated during late Cold War and post-Cold War restructuring, ending its role as an infantry division. 48th. The 48th is a good example of how infantry division labels changed during the Cold War. It began as a National Guard infantry division in the post-war era, then was reorganized into an armored division as the Guard shifted toward heavier formations. Later restructurings removed it as a division altogether. 49th. The 49th Infantry Division was a Cold War-era U.S. Army National Guard division based in California. It began life as the 52nd Infantry Division in 1946, then was renumbered as the 49th in 1947 to tie the unit's identity to the centennial of the California Gold Rush, picking up the 49ers/Argonauts nickname. It served as a stateside National Guard Division headquarters in the Strategic Reserve, training for a mobilization that never came, and it was inactivated during Army National Guard reorganization in 1968. 51st. The 51st Infantry Division was another Cold War National Guard Division headquarters maintained as part of the Strategic Reserve. It existed to provide a ready pool of organized units and command structure if a major conflict required rapid expansion. It was later inactivated, ending its run as an infantry division. 63rd. The 63rd Blood and Fire Division served in the European theater during the final months of World War II. It entered combat in France in early 1945 and was instrumental in breaking through the formidable Siegfried Line. The division fought its way across Germany in a rapid advance, famously capturing the city of Heidelberg, and was deep in Bavaria when the war in Europe ended. 65th. The 65th Battle Axe Division was another unit that joined the final push into Germany in 1945. As part of General Patton's Third Army, it crossed the Rhine River and advanced rapidly across central Germany. The division is notable for overrunning the Hersfeld-Rothaargebirge subcamp of the Buchenwald concentration camp and for linking up with Soviet Red Army forces on the Elbe River just as the war concluded. 66th. The 66th Black Panther Division's story is one of tragedy and resilience. While crossing the English Channel on Christmas Eve, 1944, 2 of its transport ships were struck by German torpedoes. Over 800 soldiers were killed in the disaster, one of the single deadliest incidents for American troops in the European theater. The surviving members of the division would go on to serve in the containment of German forces along the French coast. 69th. The 69th Division has a unique and historic claim to fame. After fighting its way across Germany, including taking part in the capture of the city of Leipzig, the 69th became the first American division to make contact with the Soviet Red Army. The famous meeting at the Elbe River on April 25, 1945, was a powerful symbolic moment, signaling the final collapse of Nazi Germany between the 2 advancing Allied fronts. 70th. The 70th Trailblazers Division fought in the European theater in some of the most difficult winter conditions of the war. Arriving in late 1944, it was deployed to the Alsace region, where it fought to repel the last major German offensive on the Western Front, Operation Nordwind. The division battled through fierce winter fighting in the Vosges Mountains and was instrumental in breaking the German Colmar pocket. 71st. The 71st Infantry Division was another unit that joined the final Allied offensive into Germany in 1945. It advanced rapidly across southern Germany as part of General Patton's Third Army. The division is noted for crossing the Rhine, Danube, and Isar rivers under fire. In the final days of the war, the 71st famously liberated the Gunskirchen Lager concentration camp in Austria, a subcamp of the Mauthausen complex. 75th. The 75th Infantry Division was rushed to Europe in late 1944, specifically to serve as reinforcements during the Battle of the Bulge. Its soldiers were thrown into some of the most brutal winter combat of the war, helping to halt the final German offensive. After the Bulge, the division continued to fight its way across Germany until the end of the war. Today's 75th Ranger Regiment shares the number, but it does not carry the 75th Infantry Division's lineage. 77th. The Statue of Liberty Division was a New York-based unit that fought exclusively in the Pacific Theater during World War II. It was famous for its role in some of the most difficult campaigns of the island-hopping strategy. The 77th fought in the brutal battles to liberate Guam and the Philippines. It was also the division that landed on and captured the island of Ieshima, where the famous war correspondent Ernie Pyle was killed. 78th. The 78th Lightning Division was another unit that was thrown into the brutal winter fighting of late 1944 in Europe. It fought in the Battle of the Bulge and was instrumental in the difficult fighting in the Hurtgen Forest. The division fought in the Battle of the Bulge and the Hurtgen Forest and later helped expand the Remagen bridgehead after the 9th Armored Division seized the Ludendorff Bridge. 79th. The 79th Division landed at Utah Beach shortly after D-Day and fought its way across France. Its Cross of Lorraine patch symbolized its mission to liberate France. The division saw extremely heavy combat, participating in the capture of the vital port of Cherbourg and fighting through the tough hedgerow country of Normandy. It continued to fight across France and into Germany until the end of the war. 80th. The Blue Ridge Division was a key component of General Patton's famous Third Army. It landed in Normandy in August 1944 and was almost immediately involved in the rapid armored exploitation that swept across France. The division was known for its incredible speed, earning the nickname Patton's Blue Ridge Butchers from the Germans for its relentless advance. It also played a critical role in relieving the siege of Bastogne during the Battle of the Bulge. 81st. The 81st Wildcat Division fought in the Pacific Theater during World War II. It participated in the difficult campaign to secure the Palau Islands, most notably in the bloody Battle of Peleliu, where it relieved the heavily battered 1st Marine Division. The division was responsible for clearing the island's many caves and fortified positions in brutal, close-quarters fighting. 83rd. The 83rd Thunderbolt Division landed in Normandy shortly after D-Day and fought in the brutal hedgerow country of France. It earned the nickname Ragtag Circus from General Patton for its resourceful and sometimes unconventional methods during its rapid advance across France. The division saw heavy fighting in the Hurtgen Forest and was a key player in halting the German advance during the Battle of the Bulge. 84th. Named in honor of Abraham Lincoln, the 84th Rail Splitters Division entered combat in Europe in late 1944. It was instrumental in the Allied push to the Roer River and was heavily engaged in the northern sector of the Battle of the Bulge, where it helped to defend against the German attack. The division fought its way across Germany and was one of the units that linked up with the Soviet Red Army at the Elbe River. 85th. The 85th Custer Division fought exclusively in the grueling Italian campaign during World War II. It was a key component of the American force that broke through the formidable German Gustav Line. The division fought its way up the mountainous spine of Italy, seeing heavy combat in the drive to capture Rome and later in the final offensive in the Po Valley. After the war, it was reconstituted as a training division in the reserves. 86th. The 86th Black Hawk Division had a unique dual theater experience in World War II. After arriving in Europe in early 1945, it participated in the final push across Germany as part of General Patton's Third Army. Following the German surrender, the division was immediately redeployed to the Pacific. It was en route to the planned invasion of Japan when the war ended, making it one of the few divisions to serve in both theaters. 87th. The 87th Golden Acorn Division was rushed to Europe as reinforcements during the Battle of the Bulge in late 1944. It was thrown into intense combat around the city of Bastogne, helping to secure the crucial road network. The division continued to fight its way across Germany, capturing the city of Koblenz, and was serving on occupation duty in Czechoslovakia when the war ended. 88th. The 88th Blue Devils Division was the first draftee division of the U.S. Army to be sent overseas in World War II. It fought exclusively in the difficult Italian campaign. The division was known for its toughness, fighting its way up the Italian peninsula and being one of the first American units to enter the city of Rome. After the war, it was stationed in Italy on occupation duty before being inactivated. 89th. The 89th Rolling W Division served in Europe during the final months of World War II. It entered combat in March 1945 and rapidly advanced across the Rhine River into the heart of Germany as part of General Patton's Third Army. The division is most noted for liberating the Ohrdruf concentration camp, one of the first such camps to be discovered by U.S. forces, exposing the horrors of the Nazi regime to the world. 90th. The 90th Tough Hombres Division, a Texas unit, landed at Utah Beach on D-Day itself and saw almost continuous, brutal combat until the end of the war. It fought through the hedgerows of Normandy, helped close the Falaise Pocket, and was instrumental in the capture of the fortress city of Metz. It also played a key role in halting the German advance in the southern part of the Battle of the Bulge. 91st. The 91st Wild West Division fought in the Italian campaign during World War II. After landing in Italy, the division fought its way up the peninsula as part of the U.S. Fifth Army. It was instrumental in breaking the formidable Gothic Line, a series of German fortifications in the northern Apennine Mountains, and fought in the final offensive in the Po Valley. 92nd. The 92nd was a segregated African American infantry division with a complicated legacy, shaped as much by the realities of the era as by combat itself. In World War II, it deployed to Italy in 1944 and fought in the Italian campaign, including operations in the North Apennines and Po Valley as part of the U.S. Fifth Army. It was inactivated in 1945 after returning to the United States, but it remains historically significant because it was the only African American infantry division to see combat in Europe during World War II. 93rd. The 93rd was another segregated division, famous for its blue helmets nickname tied to its World War I service under French command. In World War II, it served in the Pacific, deploying in 1944 and operating across the South Pacific in roles that often leaned toward garrison, defensive, and support tasks, with limited combat compared to the big-name island battles. The division was inactivated in 1946, but it remains an important part of U.S. Army history as one of the few African American divisions fielded in both World Wars. 94th. The 94th Infantry Division was deployed to Europe in late 1944. Its primary mission was to contain and reduce the heavily fortified German pockets of resistance on the French Atlantic coast, such as the naval bases at Lorient and Saint-Nazaire. After securing the coast, the division was shifted to the front line, where it fought its way across Germany in the final months of the war. 95th. The 95th Victory Division earned the nickname the Iron Men of Metz for its heroic and brutal fighting to capture the heavily fortified German city of Metz in late 1944. The battle was a costly, 9-day slugfest of urban combat against elite German troops. After capturing the city, the division continued to fight across Germany until the end of the war. 96th. The 96th Deadeye Division was a key combat unit in the Pacific Theater. It fought in two of the bloodiest campaigns of the war. The first was the Battle of Leyte in the Philippines. The second was the brutal Battle of Okinawa, where the division suffered extremely high casualties in ferocious close quarters, fighting against heavily entrenched Japanese defenders. 97th. The 97th had a unique experience, fighting in both major theaters of World War II. It first deployed to Europe, where it fought in the final push across Germany and into Czechoslovakia. Following the German surrender, it was immediately sent to the Pacific in preparation for the invasion of Japan. The division was on troop ships, headed for the invasion when the war ended. 99th. The 99th Checkerboard Division was a new and inexperienced unit that found itself holding a critical sector of the front line when the Battle of the Bulge began. Despite being outnumbered and overwhelmed, the division's stubborn and heroic defense at places like the Elsenborn Ridge was instrumental in slowing the German armored spearhead, buying crucial time for Allied reinforcements to arrive and ultimately seal the victory. 102nd. The 102nd Ozark Division, named for the region where it was formed, entered combat in Europe in the fall of 1944. It was a key player in the massive Allied offensive to push the German army back to the Rhine River. The division fought in heavy, grinding combat to clear German industrial towns, and was instrumental in capturing the city of Krefeld. After crossing the Rhine, it continued its advance across Germany until the end of the war. 103rd. The 103rd Cactus Division fought in the European theater during the final months of World War II. It saw heavy action in the Vosges Mountains of France, fighting through difficult terrain and harsh winter weather. The division pushed into Germany as part of the 7th Army, breaking through the Siegfried Line. It famously captured the city of Innsbruck in Austria, just as the war in Europe was coming to a close. 104th. The 104th Timberwolf Division was renowned for its expertise and effectiveness in night combat. Under the command of Major General Terry Allen, the division fought its way across northern Europe. It was instrumental in the brutal fighting to clear the Scheldt estuary to open the vital port of Antwerp. After helping to reduce the German Bulge, the division fought its way across Germany, famously capturing the city of Cologne. 106th. The 106th Golden Lion Division has one of the most tragic and heroic stories of the war. As a brand new, inexperienced division, it was placed in what was considered a quiet sector of the front just days before the Battle of the Bulge began. It took the full, massive force of the German surprise attack. 2 of its 3 regiments were surrounded and forced to surrender, representing the largest mass surrender of U.S. troops in the European theater. The division's surviving elements, however, heroically defended the key town of St. Vith, critically delaying the German advance. Phantom. During World War II, the U.S. Army created a number of Phantom divisions that existed only on paper. These were part of a massive deception campaign called Operation Fortitude, designed to fool the Germans into believing the D-Day landings would happen at Pas de Calais, not Normandy. The most famous of these was the 1st U.S. Army Group, which used fake radio traffic, inflatable tanks, and the command of General George S. Patton to create a believable but entirely fictional invasion force. Thanks for watching. Which of these divisions deserves its own full video next? Let me know down below. Also, please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video.